Hello, my name is Maddie or Books with Maddie, and today we're going over my 2021 reading stats. Okay, so today we are doing my reading stats from 2021, so just going over some kind of statistics that represent my reading that I did in 2021. I think we're just gonna start. I have a list of statistics and I'm just gonna present them to you. And that's what's gonna happen. We'll start off with some simple statistics, the number of books that I read this year. I read 100 books, a little bit less than last year. I read 113 last year, but this reading year was definitely a little bit more challenging. I had a lot more going on this year. And so I read 100 books, which I'm still really happy with. My reading goal was 100 books, so I completed my reading goal, and my 2022 reading goal is still gonna be 100 books. That's pretty much my standard reading goal. I would like to get over it. I think it would be fun to do every year 100 and then the year numbers, so 122. I think that would be cool, but I'm not gonna push myself because I barely read 100 this year, but I think that would be cool. That's my mental goal. My Goodreads goal is 100, but now apparently I have a mental goal, which is 122. Okay, so we're gonna go through a monthly breakdown now in talking about kind of what happened month to month. So the beginning of this year was definitely a rough start. Lowest reading months happened at the beginning of the year. In fact, my worst reading month, where I read the least number of books, was February, and I only read 3 books, which is hugely different from last year, where I think my lowest number of books that I ever read in a month was 5. I think quarantine really helped me out last year, and I actually have life this year, so that's unfortunate. My best reading month, however, was December, where I read 18 books, which is definitely something I'm really proud of. I don't think I've ever read 18 books in a month before in my life, so I'm really happy with that, but it was literally only because I had to finish my reading goal, and I had to read 18 books in a month. And I would like this year to not have to rush at the end of the year like that, because it doesn't feel like as much of an accomplishment when I'm just reading poetry collections and short audiobooks at the end of the year. I would like to space out my reading a little bit more this year and be more cognizant of that. But the average number of books that I read per month was 8.3, which I'm pretty happy with. 8 books a month is a pretty good goal. Last year it was 9 point something, so I would like to kind of increase that a little bit from 8, because I think that'll help me space out my books a little bit more and accomplish my goal. Other than that, those are all the monthly book stats that we'll do for now. Actually, no. Okay, so we'll go over my 5-star book stats. So I think Lala, this is where I first heard of this concept, where your best reading month and your worst reading month should not be measured by the amount of books that you read in a month, but by how many 5-stars you read every month, because technically your most successful reading month would be the one where you read the most 5-star books. So taking that into consideration, the month where I read the most 5-star books is a tie between June, July, and December. And each of those months I read 3 5-star books. But I think the highest percentage of... So if you divide the number of 5-star books that I read by the number of books that I read in that month, you get a success rate. So for how many books you've read this month, what is your 5-star success rate? And the highest success rate I have is in June, because 3 out of the 5 books that I read in that month were 5 stars, so that one has the highest percentage. In July, it was 3 out of 6, and then in December, it was 3 out of 18. So that definitely has the lowest success rate, and even though I read 3 5-star books that month, it was out of 18 books, so I definitely should have read more 5-star books that month if it was to be considered a successful reading month. So with that said, June was technically my most successful reading month, which is fun. I don't remember what books I read in June, but apparently 3 of them were 5 stars. And then I really like to do this thing. I did this last year, and I really love to see when people do this, is basically reading your favorite books of each month, so the top book of each month, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I guess we'll do that now. In January, my favorite book that I read was Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. In February, my favorite book that I read was A Small Place by Jamaica Kincaid. In what month am I in? March? In March, my favorite book that I read was Girls of Riyadh by Raja Al Sanea. In April, my favorite book that I read was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. Favorite book that I read in May was Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. In June, my favorite book was The Wicked King by Holly Black. In July, my favorite book was Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. In August, my favorite book was Rumi by Christina Lauren, which I read on ebooks, but not a physical copy of it. In September, my favorite book that I read was The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. In October, my favorite book that I read was A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas, which I don't have a physical copy of because I borrowed it from a friend. And then in November, my favorite book was The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. And in December, my favorite book was Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. So I just think that's pretty fun to see what everybody's favorite books per month are. Moving on, we're going to go into like page count and book length. The number of pages that I read this year was 31,433. That's lower significantly than last year. I think last year was like 36,000 or 39,000 or something like that, because I read shorter books this year and less books. So that makes sense. The number of pages that I read per month is about 2,619, and my number of pages per day that I read approximately is 86, which last year was 107, which was like crazy. And also 86 is crazy. Like, I definitely don't read 86 pages a day. I think it's like when I binge read a book, like that contributes to it, but like I'm definitely not reading 86 pages per day, like every single day. And I think that would be like really hard to do, like to read exactly 86 pages a day. That would be so hard. But my average book length was 312 pages, which like that makes sense. That's probably around the length of book that I usually read. The shortest book that I read was Death and the King's Horseman by Wole Soyinka. That's an 80-page play situation. And then the longest I read was A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas, which was 757 pages. My top genres this year were romance, fantasy, and classics. For romance, I read 26. So what's interesting, well, really quickly I'll say, what's interesting about this year is because I read 100 books, every time I say the number of books that I read in a category, that's also the percentage, which is so great because I didn't have to calculate a lot of percentages this year. I'm very pleased with that. So I have a pie chart here. It's a little bit confusing, but my top genres were romance, where I read 26 books or 26%, fantasy, which was 15 books or 15%, and then classics, which was also 15. This is really interesting to me because I was watching my old stats video from last year. My top genres were like, well, my top genre was fantasy, and then general adult fiction, and then historical fiction. And the only one that's in this year is fantasy, which is really interesting to me. I did not see romance coming as my like last year. I did not expect it to be my top genre this year. I mean, I totally knew at the end of this year that romance was going to be my top genre, but last year I don't think that's what I expected. I really like discovered for myself the romance genre, and I'm really glad that I did. I want to like make a prediction of what I think it's going to be next year. I think it'll probably be romance again because I'm highly anticipating so many romances, but I'm also really trying to get into more adult contemporary and fantasy. So yeah, I'm hoping, I don't know, I guess that's my prediction right now for next year, but I really don't know. Classics, I'm not surprised. I had to read a lot of classics for my classes this year because I was taking a lot of like American realism, Shakespeare, things like that, so I had to read a lot of classics. Okay, next we'll move on to ratings, so how I rated books this year. My average rating this year was 3.6, which is lower than last year because I think last year was 3.9. I'm definitely getting more accurate with my ratings, so like I feel like when people start reading, like this was definitely me, because you don't have a lot of experience with knowing what you consider to be a good book and you consider to be a bad book. Oftentimes we just rate books high because we enjoyed them. I'm definitely getting a little bit harsher with how I'm rating my books and the accuracy to me. Obviously, I would love to have a higher average rating, but I know like for me this year, I know that my rating year was not like super great for me. Like I didn't have a lot of books that I really loved and like huge like standouts for me, so I knew that my average rating would probably be lower. Yeah, 3.6 feels pretty accurate. I think next year I'm even gonna try harder to be more accurate with my ratings and discover more what I like and what I don't like in books and be more distinctive about what I pick up to read to hopefully generate a higher average rating that is also at the same time accurate. Okay, so I also have a pie chart here of my star ratings. So for 1-star books, I only gave 3 books this year 1-star ratings, which is the same as last year, so I was pretty happy with that. For 2 stars, I gave 8 books 2 stars, 33 books 3 stars, and 37 books 4 stars, and then only 19 books 5 stars. I'm not surprised with any of these. 3 stars and 4 stars are definitely my top 2 things that I usually rate books. I'm actually surprised there's more 4 stars than 3 stars. I thought there was going to be more 3 stars, but they are pretty close. I would like to try to use like a 10-star system next year, not like 10 stars, but 10 categories. So using like 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, using like half stars. I know that Goodreads doesn't offer half stars. Please, Goodreads, please offer us half stars. I try to do that like in my own personal statistics to try to be more accurate, because I think that could generate more accurate results, and so I think I'm going to look into doing that next year. As far as age demographic goes, I didn't read any middle grade this year. I also have a pie chart for this. I didn't read any middle grade this year. I read 10 new adult, 12 young adult, and 77 adult. I'm definitely a little bit shocked with this one. Last year, I believe I read like 50 something young adult, and then it got more diversified and nuanced between new adult, young adult, and adult. But I definitely read the most young adult. It's surprising to me that I read so few young adult. I definitely knew that I'd read more adult, but I thought that I definitely read more than 12 young adult, but I guess not. I'm definitely moving away from young adult, but I would like to still, read from that category and enjoy what's happening, because I think there's a lot of great, amazing things happening in the young adult community right now, and I still want to be, up to date with that and everything. So I do think I want to expand on what I'm reading in that genre, but be more discerning. Maybe discerning is the word I'm looking for. I don't know. More discerning about what I choose from that category, not just reading what everybody recommends me, but what things like actually interest me. I did have a young adult reawakening this year after I read The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, because that is like my favorite book series ever, and so I did definitely reignite my interest in young adult this year through that series. So I do want to continue to explore that genre and see what else it has to offer. One of my favorite statistics for literally no reason is if I've read from an author before or if they are a new author to me. So how I calculate this is I go through every author that I've read, and if I've read from them before, obviously I put a tally. If I haven't, but I read from them more than once, the first time that they come up on my reading list, I say I haven't read from them before, but the second time they come up, I say that I have. So for example, Holly Black. So the first time that I read Holly Black, The Cruel Prince, I'd never read from her before. So she counted as an author I'd never read from before, but then the next 2 times that I read from her, when I read The Wicked King and The Queen of Nothing, I counted that as 2 times from an author that I had read before. So 38 times this year I read from an author I had previously read from, and this is not 38 authors necessarily. This is 38 times I had read from an author before. So Holly Black counts as twice because the Wicked King and The Queen of Nothing. So that's 1 author but 2 times, so 38 times. But there were 62 authors that I had never read from before that I was reading from the first time, which is great. I would like to have a larger sample size of authors that I have read from before and continue to read from them. I think that's something that I'm going to work on next year, or this year I guess, is reading from authors that I have read from and enjoyed from before, because a lot of times when I read from an author I've read from before, I buy some of their backlist and then I never get to them because I'm so excited about new authors, and I do really want to, when I find an author that I love, I want to continue to support them, and because I know that I already love them, I think that'll give me a higher success rate in reading books that I will enjoy. And then next we'll go over the format that I read the books in. I have another handy dandy pie chart for this one. So this has to do with the way that I consumed a book. So either physical, audio, things like that. The most prevalent way that I consumed books this year was physical, which makes sense to me. 56 books that I read this year were consumed through my eyes, just in my eyes, reading them, which I'm happy with. That's definitely the lowest that it's been, which I'm actually happy with, because that means that I bought less books, maybe, because it means that I was borrowing more from the library, because I was either reading them through ebook or listening to them. 22 of the books that I read this year were mixed, so that either means I was listening and reading at the same time, or half of it I read with my eyes and then half of it I read with my ears, or any type of mix of that. Half of it I read an ebook and half of it I listened to, anything like that. There were a lot of books that I kind of read through mixed media. I love doing that, by the way. I think it's amazing to experience books through so many different formats, and I love doing that. 12 books I read on ebook. I think there was only like 1 or 2 that I read last year, and I'm so happy with myself that I'm finally utilizing my library to a further extent. If you haven't heard of the app Libby, it's an amazing resource. I know it works in the US. I'm not sure where else it's available, but it's a library app where you can put in your library card and then you have access to their ebooks and audiobooks and things like that. So 12 books I read this year were from my library as an ebook, and then 10 I listened to as audiobooks, which is also something that I'd like to grow into doing more of. I'd like to listen to at least 1 audiobook a month because I love listening to audiobooks. I love being able to do things as I listen to audiobooks. It is such a productive way for me to be consuming literature, and so I love doing that, and I really need to take more advantage of that. There's also so many free audiobooks on YouTube that I would highly recommend checking out. And then lastly, the last category that I will go over is publication year. So I have no idea what this pie chart is going to look like. It's going to be a mess because there's a lot of different publication years that I read from this year, especially when you're reading classics, and that just spans throughout all of history. But what I'm focusing on is the top 3 that I read from this year, and that is 2021, I read 18 books, 2019, I read 15 books, in 2020, I read 12 books. I'm so pleased with these statistics because every year I want to be reading from the past 3 years the majority from the current year, and then the past 2 years also, because I know, like, my goal this year and in the future is to be more cognizant of current releases and, you know, reading things that are relevant, because I oftentimes am just trying to catch up on books that I haven't read yet from like past years. So I think that it's really important for me to focus on the current publication year and the past 2. I think that'll help me to be giving more relevant information to you guys and things like that. So I'm really pleased with those statistics, and I'm happy that my most prevalent publication year that I read from last year was 2021. That is it for the stats video. It was short, it was sweet, it'll be easy to edit. I'm near the end of this week, and I'm so excited about that. And I believe I've posted 7 videos at this point. It feels like it should be 7 videos at this point. Yeah, there will be another video coming soon. So keep an eye out for that. It is one that I'm very proud of and very excited about. Thank you so much for all of your support this week. I've been loving reading your comments and really feeling blessed to have all of your support. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. Let me know some of your statistics in the comments below. How many books you read, how many books you want to read this coming year, any statistics that you have. I am obsessed with the people's reading stats, so please share some in the comments below. Other than that, if you feel so inclined, like and subscribe. It really helps me out. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day. I hope you have a great week. I hope you have a great life. And I will see you very, very soon. Bye-bye.